Hey, good to see you. Welcome back to the Bruce Collins Show. Our guest today is Bill Walton of The Bill Walton Show. He's a successful businessman and a member of the 2016 Trump transition team. The Bill Walton Show is a forum for in-depth and thought-provoking conversations with leaders, thinkers, artists, entrepreneurs, and activists. Please feel free to email me any spare IQ points you can part with for the interview tonight. I may need them.
Flip on the switch, feel the static clear, naming the glow, yeah, the reason we're here. From the edge of the map to your kitchen chair, he's talking wild truth like he owns the air. Out past the highway, out past the mall, where the sand keeps secrets, you can hear that call. It's the Bruce Collins Show.
Welcome back to the Bruce Collins Show. I'm Bruce Collins, the Baron of Broadcasting. My co-host is Chad, the Odometer Miles. Our guest tonight is Bill Walton of The Bill Walton Show. If you want to join the Bruce Collins Show community, you are free to join our page on Facebook. And also, we always appreciate it when you like our videos and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. I also have another YouTube channel called Bruce Collins Reacts and Stuff that you may also enjoy. And now, on with the show. Allow me to introduce my co-host, Chad Miles, and also Christopher Cartwright. Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing, Bruce?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, the studio looks different tonight.
Hey, can I ask you guys a question?
Sure, what is it, Chad?
What are you two doing at my house?
You invited us.
I never invited you.
Well, then it must be some kind of a weird coincidence.
You put in his address in your GPS before we started driving, Bruce.
Was that right, Bruce?
I think there's a logical explanation for this.
Okay, I'm waiting.
I think Christopher said you needed us to come over and cheer you up.
I never said that.
Well, why did you come over, Bruce?
For dinner, of course. Thanks for the free meal.
I didn't fix you dinner.
You must have. I have plenty of food. Christopher, did you get some of this gourmet cuisine?
No, we just got here.
Hey, Chad?
Yeah?
Why is your dog staring at me funny?
He's probably mad because you're eating out of his food plate.
Ugh. If this is the way you treat your guests, I'll never come back.
Hey, that's a good idea.
Well, since we're here, Chad, can you give us one of your world-famous reports?
You must be referring to my dumbest news stories of the week.
Coffee stain on his collar, name tag hanging wrong, sleep in both of his eyes, red light flashing strong. He shuffles up to the camera, cracked mug, crooked tie, says, I've seen some stupid stories, but this one made me cry. Oh man, it's the Chad Miles Report headlines, the dumbest news of the week. From Florida man fights lawnmower to Infolix with concrete. We tune in for the train wreck. We sweet. Breaking cat stuck in a sweater, breaking toast that looks like a face. Council meets about a pigeon who keeps pooping on the mayor's briefcase. He's deadpan reading disaster, that's really just a broken cone. Nation shocked, he says then Snickers by a kid who married his phone. It's the Chad Miles Report. Headlines, the dumbest news of the week. Grandma banned from local bingo for allegedly counting too quick. We tune in for the train wreck. We act appalled while trying not to scream. Yeah, the Chad Miles Report. Serving the dumbest news.
Well, you heard the music. That means it's time for the Chad Miles Report. Chad, take it away.
Article number 1. Rebecca Woods, age 59, of Massachusetts, was found guilty of assault and battery after unleashing hives of bees on officers who were in the process of evicting a friend of hers. The Guardian reported on April 28th. One officer had to be hospitalized, and others were stung repeatedly. In addition, Woods lost about 1,000 bees in the kerfuffle.
1,000 bees.
1,000 bees. That's pretty gangster
Substantial.
to release bees on people.
Yeah,
Also,
Some were-
good use of kerfuffle.
Good.
exactly.
Some were crushed by the hives as she tried to move them, and some were female honeybees that perished after employing their stingers. Woods' lawyer, Mary Saldarelli, said that Woods' own experience with being evicted compelled her to intervene on her friend's behalf, a cancer patient in his 80s.
The story gets more wild by the minute.
That makes sense. The man was not home at the time when Woods unleashed her bees, having gone to the library to try and find information about halting the eviction. That proves he's in his 80s. Woods was sentenced to 6 months in jail. That's from The
wow.
Guardian.
Because that's
So-
essentially, what is it called? Brutality toward police officers, right?
Well, it's a new
Yeah, I
crime.
guess.
It's called Unleashing the Bees.
You've heard Unleash the Dogs of War.
So-
Now it's Unleash the
I
Bees.
assume they had a yard and these bees were outside.
Yeah, I'm guessing they had those big
Or-
white
But
box
they just
hives.
occupied her house and she opened the front door and said, "Get them."
Go get them.
My killer bees.
They're trained, you know.
Yeah.
Fly, my pretties.
Article number 2. To continue on the theme, meanwhile in Arizona, 2 men were attacked by what sheriff's deputies called a moving black cloud of hundreds of thousands of angry bees.
How do they
People
really
magazine
know, though,
reported.
hundreds of thousands?
Hundreds of thousands.
How do you get a ballpark estimate like that?
How they know they're angry?
That's massive. Think about that. Like a city of people, a couple 100,000, that's a lot of people, right?
That's
Do you
a
know
lot
how
of
many bees you'd have to occupy the sky to be hundreds of thousands?
Probably
I
a
don't know.
moving
Big cloud.
black cloud worth.
Mhm.
People magazine reported on April 29th, the Greenlee County Sheriff's Department described the men as completely covered head to toe in bees.
Whoa.
That's a lot of bees. Firefighters don protective gear, but the bees still managed to sting several on their heads. No ambulances were available, so the men got a ride to the hospital in the fire truck while firefighters picked the bees off of them. That's quite a ride. Officials were
They
unable to
like that
locate
better
a
because
hive.
before that, the cops were picking the bees off of them with batons.
Get off of them. Officials were unable to locate a hive and suspect the bees were part of a migrating swarm. Both men have been released from the hospital. That's from People magazine.
Migrating swarm, were they legal? And you know, could it be possible that these were the missing bees from the first story?
Oh.
We may have found Rebecca Woods'
Hmm.
bees.
I think there's a connection.
Yeah.
Article number 3. A speed limit sign in Appleton, Wisconsin is giving motorists pause. UPI reported on April 29th that the Outagamie County Recycling and Solid Waste Facility announced their new speed limit, 17.3 miles per hour. Program coordinator Jordan Hiller hopes the sign is just disruptive enough to make drivers slow down and be more aware of their surroundings. Why 17.3? Because it makes you pause. It makes you look twice. And most importantly, it breaks that autopilot feeling we can all fall under when driving familiar routes, the recycling center said in a social media post.
Can you imagine if the cop pulled you over? Do you know how fast you were going? 19.286 miles. And by the way, I can still taste dog food in my mouth.
I'm sorry to hear that. If Richard Hoagland were running the center, it would be 19.5 miles per hour.
There you go.
That's for all the Art Bell fans. Easter egg, deep cut. Article number 4. Christine Keilback, age 58 of Manitoba, found herself in a hole, UPI reported on April 28th. No, really, an actual hole. She had just stepped out of her friend's car when she fell feet first into a hole in the ground and
Awkward.
buried up to her armpits. That's an understatement.
So the lady that was driving her gets out of the car and turns around. All she sees is a woman
Right.
that's just her arms in her head.
I don't know what happened.
Help!
Buried up to her armpit, she waved at passersby and had her friends snap photos while they waited for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service to rescue
Taking
her.
pictures of her.
This reminds
And
me
I
of a
know
balloon
that's
story.
They probably went on Facebook.
When they came around, it was quite surprising to find my head and shoulders just above the ground. The ground had just given away very fast. I have no recollection of the fall. It just happened very quickly, Keilback said.
The first paramedic was really stupid. He walked up to her and said, "Where's the rest of your body?"
You're so short.
You can't ride in the ambulance unless you're this tall.
Sorry. Paramedics used a harness to pull Keilback out of the hole. And she made it out unharmed.
Wow.
Wait till you'll hear the explanation for this. City officials who surveyed the situation determined that the hole was not a sinkhole as suspected, but a catch basin with a missing cover. So if you don't know what a catch basin is, when you're at Walmart and you're walking through the parking lot and you look down and there's a steel grate with a hole under it with water, that's what she fell in. Somebody took the cover off.
Poor thing.
In her case, it was not great.
That could have been really dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
They
Outside
found
my
a
gym, we have one that's so deep you can't even see the bottom of it.
Right,
In a way, she's probably fortunate she has arms
right.
because it probably got the edge of that.
They found another coverless catch basin nearby as well. I mow the
With
lawn
another
there.
short person.
Yeah. It was crazy. I mow the lawn there, she said, of the second hole. I mean, it could have happened again. Wouldn't that have been something? Both holes have since been covered. You have to think somebody took the cover off. There's no other way that could come off.
Yeah.
So somebody doesn't like
especially
her.
if there were, there were two that had missing that were coverless.
Right.
So yeah, somebody must have done that.
Yeah. There's a saboteur.
I mean, what are the odds of two grates missing?
And they're
in
heavy.
The same area.
Yeah, they're not light. Article number 5.
This is so bizarre.
Yeah, this is funny. A 19-year-old Taiwanese woman attempted to board her plane in Bangkok with an unusual carry-on item: 30 Indian star tortoises worth
Wow.
$9,000 strapped under her clothing.
And 1,000
Oh my gosh.
bees.
They were a cloud around her.
They did a
Yahoo News
question mark
reported
above her.
that the Thai authorities grew suspicious of her movements.
What's that stuff moving around under her clothing?
And a search uncovered the protected species.
Poor
The
things.
suspect had used adhesive tape to immobilize the animals, pack them into cloth bags, and attach them to her body to evade detection, Thailand's Wildlife Conservation Department said. The passenger was charged with illegally transporting animals and evading customs controls, and given the preponderance of wildlife smugglers who use Thailand as a transportation hub to sell endangered animals on the black market, authorities are investigating whether she could be linked to a larger smuggling ring. The tortoises are under care of wildlife conservation officials.
I could
Happy
just
ending.
see them, her lifting the clothes, and somebody at first goes, "Wait a minute, she has a bomb
Yeah, right.
strapped to her body." Oh no,
30.
it's turtles. You know, I wonder how it feels to have 30 turtles under your clothes. Have you
They
ever
must
tried
have
that,
been
Chad?
little. No. No, tortoises, on the other hand, is very exhilarating.
Yeah. And now the shells themselves, the contour of the shells, wouldn't that look weird against your clothing? You have
were
like
they
all
like-
these bumps on your body.
Yeah, were they like were they like hatchlings or something? They must have been small.
Had to have been hatchlings, yeah. They said they were
Sort
in
of like-
sacks.
Sort of like Eddie Murphy in The Clumps. This lady walks in and she's got all these turtles under her.
As a man who has turtles,
Mm.
they are very strong. So they had to be little ones, or they would just be clawing at her the whole time.
I bet.
I didn't know we had an expert on the
Okay.
panel.
Still 30
you.
of them. That's
30.
tremendous.
30.
That's
That's
tremendous.
crazy.
These were some good stories, Chad. Hey, Chad and Christopher, thank you so much for joining us this week. Up next is Bill Walton of The Bill Walton Show. In a moment. Our guest today is Bill Walton. Bill Walton is known as America's Renaissance CEO, former chairman and CEO of a $10 billion NYSE-traded investment company, film producer taking 2 films into the Cannes and Tribeca film festivals, a self-made investor, and the host of The Bill Walton Show. After decades in public markets and private investment, he now writes and speaks about the intersection of finance, policy, and culture. Bill Walton was a key member of President Trump's 2016 transition team. Bill Walton, welcome to the Bruce Collins Show.
Great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on. Now, first, tell us about the Bill Walton Show. What are the topics you cover, and where can people access your show?
Well, Bill Walton Show started out as a hobby. I grabbed a camera and a microphone about 8 or 9 years ago and started interviewing friends I'd met, people I'd known through my world in finance and arts boards and public policy boards. So I had a pretty good Rolodex, and I implored my friends to come on the show, even though I didn't really have a clue what I was doing. But it was great fun, and then it kind of built, and we got the studio set up a bit, and then it's evolved. And so the kind of show we've got now is that intersection, which kind of covers everything of culture, money, politics, and most recently we've had John Jelkanek on, who's the really brilliant interviewer on American thought leaders with the Epoch Times, and he's written a book on a pretty gruesome topic, forced organ harvesting in China. And then, on lighter topics, we've had Michael Pack, the documentary filmmaker, and he's got an incubator set up with young people who are making documentaries which are conservative, which doesn't always happen in the documentary world. And then going further back, we've had Art Laffer, the economist, and George Gilder, the futurist thinker, and Ed Meese, who is Ronald Reagan's attorney general, and we've done it just shy of 300 shows. And the website has all of them. It's thebillwaltonshow.com. And we've also got them on my Substack page, which is also the Bill Walton Show. And I think if one goes on to take a look at that, you'll see most of the topics are evergreen. We're getting a lot of views from shows we did 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago because unfortunately, a lot of the things that were issues then are still issues today, and so we're wrestling with a lot of the same. In particular, the cultural issues have remained very much the same.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we alluded to in the introduction, you've had a very successful business career. What did that teach you about politics?
Oh my. Well, I think the biggest difference in business is there is a metric, and it's called profit or loss. And you're set up to do something, a business that create, a good service, a good product, something that's attractive to people, and is affordable. And you can measure your outcome by how well you do financially. And of course, there are other metrics, but primarily you've got that ultimate test. And in politics, the only metric seems to be, can you get reelected or elected? And I find, I've lived and worked in the Washington area for, 3 decades now, and there's a massive difference between people who are in business and people who are in politics, because in business you've got a measurable test and you're held to that standard. In politics, not so much. I mean, you can take a look at the resumes of all the senators we have and the congressmen, and you can point to very few, a handful, that can actually show what they've actually produced. So that's the biggest difference. And of course, I think as a businessman, I see that as the biggest problem.
Mm-hmm. Again, we're speaking with Bill Walton. You can go to thebillwaltonshow.com to find out more information about Bill and his program, and also his Substack is The Bill Walton Show. Now, Bill, you were quoted as saying, "I've spent much of my life in rooms where big decisions were made, boardrooms, policy meetings, political back channels. What I learned is that the theories we admire from afar often collapse when they meet real people living real lives." Can you expand on that thought?
Well, that's a piece I wrote that's on my Substack site called The Airless Age, and it was in response directly to what I thought about the COVID lockdowns and all the authoritarian moves that were made back in 2021. And, the gist of it is, from my own personal background, I've served on dozens of policy boards and arts boards. I was president of the National Symphony Orchestra, and in the policy world, AEI and Heritage, for example. And you find that what happens when you're dealing with people in board meetings and things like that is things quickly become pretty abstract, and you're not really talking about people, but you're talking about these ideas that you want to, or these rules you want to make. And in particular there, I was referring to sort of the government agencies that were ruling our lives then and still continue to rule our lives, and they don't have much connection to the people they regulate, and they certainly don't have much connection to the results of the regulation. And so you get these people ruling from afar, and it's all very abstract, and it's not really great for individuals. I think there's a Catholic word for it, particularity or something. I'll have to look it up. But basically, the closer people are to the problem or to whatever's going on, they're more likely to have more information about what works and what doesn't work. And my old world of private equity and the manufacturing companies we had, the best businesses were those that listened to the people who are working in the factory and finding out what worked and what didn't work, and then making adjustments to it. And probably the worst companies we invested in were those who had their offices miles away from the factory and had people designing things that they never saw. So that's the gist of it. But I do think we're being ruled by people that don't have a lot of common experience, the common touch. And that's why I like Donald Trump so much, is that even though theoretically he's this remote real estate czar in Manhattan, when we see him, slinging fries at McDonald's or wearing a orange vest in a garbage truck.
yeah.
He actually looks pretty at home, and so he's got a feel for ordinary people, which I think is I think it's essential.
Yeah. In 2016, I wasn't aware of President Trump's political leanings intensely. I knew he was Republican, and I would have voted for anybody but the Clintons. So I wasn't convinced or sure that he was truly a conservative. I was familiar with him on The Apprentice, and I had read some of his books in the past. I knew he was an iconic real estate figure. Did he slowly adopt conservatism over time, or was that always who he was?
I don't think Donald Trump is a quote conservative even today. I think Donald is a pragmatist who has certain things he believes that the way America ought to be, and he acts on that, and it's I don't know that he really. I don't think I'm sitting here in my library and I've got hundreds of books in here that are all these theories of government or history or things like that. I don't think he's read any of these books, and I think Donald's inclined to go with what works, and what works are conservative values. I mean, if you look at one of my thoughts is that the bourgeois virtues have been denigrated forever by the left, and it turns out if you look at what those are, there's thrift, there's family, there's deferred gratification, there's a certain level of civility, and all those sorts of things. No matter what you call them, left or right, those behaviors work for people. And when you don't do those sorts of things, things don't work out very well. And I think the left is filled with all kinds of ideas that don't work. And so, Donald's more of a utilitarian. But what's he done? He's probably done more for cultural conservatives, Christian conservatives, than any other president I can think of. His stand on abortion, the border. Prayer in school, you name it. He's done it. And who would think that a playboy from Queens, who was Mr. New York, would be getting all these things in place? But that's exactly what he did. And with Donald, I tend not to look at what he is saying. I tend to look at what he does, and that's you can keep your heart rate down if you do that, because you pay less attention to his outrageous stuff and look at the good stuff that he's actually been accomplishing.
How is President Trump able to steamroll when everywhere he turns he is met by Trump derangement syndrome? Is that his business background?
Oh, yes. I first met Donald Trump in 1978, just barely. He hardly knew I was in the room, but I was the banker to Jay Pritzker, who developed the Pritzker family fortune. Now, not to be confused with J.B. Pritzker, who's the atrocious governor of Illinois. Jay made the family fortune, and I was Continental Bank. He'd just come in. He was our biggest customer, and I handled the account, and he was in the real estate casino business. Also, he was in all sorts of businesses, and one of the deals he was in was a casino hotel in Atlantic City, and his partner was Donald Trump, and Donald Trump at that time was probably 32 years old, something, and he was as brash then as he is now. He may be I think he was maybe brasher then, and his negotiating style is to throw out something that's utterly unacceptable to the other side, and then work back from that. And his other style is that and they call this Trump chickens out, which is not at all what he's doing. He's just playing what I call tactical flexibility or improvisation, where if something isn't working, you change your mind and change directions, and that's treated as a bad thing. I treat it as a way I think of it as a way to be effective. So he bulldozes through things, but if you meet him in person, he can be very charming. And a lot of what you see as the public bluster is not how he operates when you're in the room with him. And he's some people hard this to believe, he's actually a very good listener. And he's always querying people about what they think about this or what they think about that. He always makes up his own mind, but he's a lot more complicated and more interesting than what you see if you just read his tweets or some of his stronger statements aboard Air Force One.
Which is actually what Bill Maher said, a year ago when he met President Trump.
Yeah.
Now, Bill, we now know through declassified documents that many powerful people were tied to Jeffrey Epstein. We know through declassified documents also that President Obama and Secretary Clinton's fingerprints were all over the phony Trump-Russia collusion hoax. Strong evidence pointed to Joe Biden's influence over his family's money trail. Does anyone on the left ever get prosecuted for their crimes?
I think I'm going to have to go silent here for about 60 seconds while I think about that. No. Not in memory. I can't think. Maybe you can come up with someone, but it's not a. What they've done, unfortunately, is that the last 40, 50, 60 years, they've had this strategy of gaining control of the institutions, and it was actually a Marxist strategy, cultural Marxism, by this guy named Gramsci, and wrote in Italy in the 1920s. It goes that far back. And they had a plan to take over the judiciary, to take over the schools, to take over the
media,
even corporations, media, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so, when it comes to prosecutions, the federal judiciary, even the local judiciary, is not likely to prosecute a Democrat. And we know that George Soros has been working assiduously with hundreds of millions of dollars to get radical left prosecutors and all over the country, and so they're not likely to do that. But at the political level, the national level, prosecuting Hillary Clinton or anybody that is in that world, it seems like in my personal view, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. Again, we're speaking with Bill Walton. He's the host of The Bill Walton Show. You can check out his website, thebillwaltonshow.com, and also his Substack, which is The Bill Walton Show. Now, Bill, what's your assessment of the Federal Reserve's role right now? Are they stabilizing the system or distorting it?
Oh, gosh. Do we have a couple hours? I know a lot. As you mentioned in my introduction, I know a lot about the Fed and capital markets. I was on Wall Street for a long time in the investment business and ran a fairly big investment company. So I know about financial policies. And the issue with the Fed is, I go all the way back to 1912 when it was created. Mm-hmm. And it was created not for any sort of altruistic reason. It was created so the big banks in New York could control the money and control the capital markets. And they put a lot of the people from those big banks into the initial board of governors of the Fed. And, ever since then, and by the way, it was set up during the progressive era of Woodrow Wilson, who believed there was no government program. I mean, he was worse than FDR. No government program that he didn't like, and so it was always set up to centralize money, centralize control, and over time the power built up and up and up, and Congress started giving the Fed powers that they have no ability to bring about. For example, we all know about interest rates. That's obviously a money issue, but they also have a mandate to keep unemployment low in the United States. And I'm a finance guy. I'm an economist. I don't know exactly what the levers are that the Fed uses to keep unemployment low, and it's not something that could ever work to begin with. And then in the more recent few decades, they've added things that are social justice. The San Francisco Fed, there are 12 different banks that are in the system. All they've been writing about is social justice issue and DEI and cultural Marxism for the last well, also, of course, climate change for the last decade. It has nothing to do with our money. So the Fed's got a very confused mandate. It's got a very suspicious origin story, and if their job is to keep control of inflation, they've done a damn bad job. I mean, the Fed in 1912, since they were created, the dollar, has lost, guess what? How much percent? 98% of its value since it was created. And I can't think of a single recession that the Fed has been able to predict. They've got 700 or 800 economists, all from MIT, and none of them ever worked in the private sector. None of them ever traded bonds. They don't know that part, but they've got their big macroeconomic models that really don't manage to monitor the economy. So I guess, Bruce, what I'm saying, I may have used up my time on the Fed, but I think they've been a catastrophe, as well as as the other central banks in Europe. Now, if I were appointed Fed chair, and Kevin, I know both Kevin Hassett and Kevin Warsh, who were the two finalists, and Kevin Warsh got the job, the things that they would need to do as the new Fed chair would be so resoundingly unpopular inside the Fed building. All the economists, if we started, reducing their mandate to do fewer things, they'd resist that. It's a tough thing to change. But I think they're in the headlines all the time because the Fed spends all the things that interest rates and capital markets and the value of the dollar. The traders on Wall Street all have to follow that very closely, hour to hour, minute to minute, second to second. And so I think it gets a lot more press and perceived power than it really deserves. But President Trump is right, though, to think that the popular people, Trump wins the popular vote, he gets elected president, and then he's not supposed to have anything to do with our money. This notion of Fed independence, which has been touted, we would never want a truly independent Fed. It needs to be susceptible to the political will of the people, and it's drifted way apart from that. So I guess if you gave me another 2 hours, I'd come up with 53 things we could do better, but we don't have that time.
Right. I just have one quick question, though. Over my shoulder right here is a picture of Ron Paul. And I wonder, is ending the Fed even viable, though? Could that be done?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I love Ron, but it's not. See, the thing is we've got everybody in the town of D.C. has got an interest in something, and then existing in the existing way things are done. And to end the Fed, I don't know where you'd find the political will or the votes to do that, because it would have to be implemented through Congress. I mean, Trump might be willing to do it, but Congress, if you look at the way they raise their money, the donations, the contributors, the Kate Street issue, the big banks who are benefiting from the existing system, no, the Fed is not going to go away.
Mm-hmm. So we'll move on then, because we can tackle that point in 10 years, right? So
we'll come back. That was what I said about my shows. On the shows I did 5 years ago, we identified all the problems, but we haven't fixed them yet.
Okay, here's another sticky subject: tariffs. So do you see a point where tariffs, and I understand, the Supreme Court's decision, and now we're supposedly going to be refunding money. Does this ever get to the place in Trump's administration where the tariffs positively impact U.S. debt levels?
Oh, goodness. Well, the short-term effect was everybody was hysterical that it was going to increase inflation and prices. And the effect of that so far is not much. At some points, the tariffs are going to be passed through to consumers, but corporations have found other ways around it, so the inflation effect hadn't really happened. In terms of using it as a bludgeon for trade partners to do certain things, I think that's the effective way that Trump has used tariffs. But if you had to ask me, and Trump hasn't asked my advice yet on this, I think there are better ways to coerce companies to do the things you want to do on trade without imposing tariffs. Nevertheless, it's his favorite tool, and well, he's doing a lot of things I like. I think tariffs are not one of them. But where we are now, though, is it also looks like it's going to contribute to the Treasury revenue, and therefore theoretically could be used to reduce debt begin taking some baby steps towards balancing the budget. But the real issue is not so much that, it's the spending. And spending has been out of control for the last 6 years, before that really, but especially since COVID. And as long as Congress and President Trump are willing to sign off on $2 trillion plus annual deficits, spending is going to overwhelm everything else. And coming back to the Fed, I think the technical word among economists is the big word, the fiscal overhang. And what they mean by that is Congress is spending way too much money that we can afford, and it's got the Fed and the Treasury busily financing that deficit with additional debt. And that machine seems to be, on autopilot. And I think President Trump has not been willing to step up to the spending issue. And that's just going to be one of those unresolved things that we'll have to live with. The only way to fix it is to grow the economy so fast at 3%, 4%, 5%, and grow our way out of the debt. I mean, in terms of a household, if you've got $100,000 of income and $1 million of debt, you've got a big problem. And the United States is roughly in that position. So the idea is if you could grow your income to a bigger number, 300,000, 400,000, and make that debt more manageable. That's the same thing we're looking at on a macro scale, and that's why people are enthusiastic about artificial intelligence. They believe it's going to increase productivity and margins will go up, cash flow will go up, and that will all contribute to the corporate tax coffers, and therefore we're seeing a way to earn our way out of it through being more productive. That's the theory. I don't see any evidence of that at the moment.
So I always ask people like yourself who are fighting the good fight, at the end of the day, are you pessimistic or optimistic about America's future?
I'm optimistic about Americans' future, individuals. I'm not so sure about what our reckless government is likely to do next. I think the American character, by and large, is still strong enough that as individuals, I think Americans can figure out a way to survive and thrive, which is why I often talk about personal solutions to policy questions rather than trying to get policies changed. I think you need to prepare yourself as a family or as an individual to deal with all sorts of economies, and keep yourself in a protected mode and a thriving mode. I think that's possible. So I'm optimistic about Americans, and I guess in terms of America's prospects, one of the things we have going for us is that most of the other countries in the world are so badly governed, we look good by comparison. And we still have a colossal economy compared to the rest of the world. And China, which had been coming up, is showing extreme economic weakness. And so it's not like they're likely to overtake us economically. So I think as long as we keep our economic edge and our technological edge, America is in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm. I listened to a guy on the internet. His name is Jim Poplava. He has a website called financialsense.com. And he likes to say that America is the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry basket.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I meant to say. That's a good way to put it. I like that.
So if you could sit down with the average, say, Bill Walton show listener and give them and Bruce Collins show listener, of course, and give them one piece of advice about navigating the next 5 to 10 years, what would it be?
Stay out of debt. Get your debt down to zero. And because if you look at all the financial crises that have ever occurred, it's because of too much debt. And that's not only at an economy-wide level, it's a personal issue. And if you've got, and getting out of debt means right-sizing your spending compared to what you're earning, and don't take the federal government as your guide. So wherever you are, wherever you live, look very hard at the, if you have a lot of debt, be very mindful that if you whittle that down to something that even in the worst times, you don't owe somebody else money, and therefore they can take your assets if lenders choose to do, you'll be okay. That would be one place to start. And then the other place, I would say, if you're beginning to get into the point where you save money, a good place to put it's still in the equities market. The stocks, I've got a lot of my own assets, but I'm not authorized to give investment advice. But
Right.
the stock market's been a pretty good place to be for the last 100 years. And I think there's been a tremendous amount of wealth created there, and that even though that'll fluctuate a lot and really cause a lot of stomach churning, on balance it's gone up and up. I think 6, 7, 8% a year. So if you can handle the volatility in terms of steady growth in value, that would be where I would be, and then I'd stop there. I think I'm not recommending people become monks and go off and not spend money, but you got to get your expenses right sized with your income. Get the debt down, and you can ride anything out if that's the case.
And if the market does correct, then you can buy low.
Exactly. Well, I've got a lot of dividend stocks, and what I've noticed is that even though the market will sometimes send the stock price down, the companies keep paying the dividends. And 9 out of 10 companies paying dividends are loath to ever cut those, and so you still get income from those, even if the stock price isn't making you happy. And you're right. I mean, if it goes down and you feel pretty good about the company, buy some more.
Yeah, exactly. Bill Walton, the host of The Bill Walton Show at thebillwaltonshow.com, and also you can check out his Substack, The Bill Walton Show. Hey, Bill, do you have anything interesting coming up on your show that people may want to check out?
Well, I'm still in a creative mode right now. I did, after doing about 275 shows, I said I'm going to hit the pause button. So for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been holding off on doing new shows. But stay tuned. They'll be out there. They're up on YouTube and Rumble and my Substack site. I think one of the things I'd recommend is that I'm doing some more writing, and I've been writing on some things like the airless age and how decisions get made in the boardrooms, which I think people could find interesting. And I also wrote, I believe, a fairly interesting piece on comparing the Cultural Revolution in China, where Mao completely stripped it away of its ancient cultures that made it a highly moral society, and that gave him free license to create the Communist Party that's engaged in this horrific organ harvesting. Well, if you look what's happening in America, we're undergoing a slow cultural revolution, and they're trying to shut down the institutions that preserve morality and value systems and things like that. And so we've got to be mindful that if they do that, we're going to be left with an authoritarian United States, which we can't let happen. It's unacceptable. So that write-up is there. And then I also did a recent profile that was in Blaze last month. It was the most read article in Blaze about why Trump's effective, and talks about his appetite or his ability to assess risk, and also his ability to improvise. And I sort of made fun of the bureaucrats who can't do that. So that's a fun read.
Excellent. Well, Bill, this has been a real pleasure to have you on, and I hope to have you back someday. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Well, I'm still working on more notes about the Federal Reserve. So,
yeah, part 2.
Okay, well, great. Thanks for having me on. Good talking with you.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for joining us this week. Really appreciate it. If you would, please like this video and subscribe to the Bruce Collins Show channel. That helps us a lot with the algorithm, so we can spread this show over many eyeballs. Also, I have another channel if you're interested. It's Bruce Collins Reacts and Stuff, where I look at some of the mysterious, interesting videos out on YouTube and I react to them. I think you'll like that too. In the meantime, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Show.
That's a wrap, Falafelites. This has been a Bad Yodeler production. Good night.